What's going on, baseball fans? How are we doing? So what a wild trade deadline that was yesterday. So in this video, I wanted to go over my winners and my losers. Let's go talk about it. Before I get to the teams, let's go look at the tiers. At the top, we have winner, winner, chicken dinner. The next tier down below, we have decent, not just decent, more like decent. The next tier down below is okay, I guess. And then at the bottom, we have loser. Okay, let's start off with the Chicago Cubs, the team that had the most to sell. I think the Cubs had a phenomenal day yesterday. If we take a look, I mean, yeah, sure, they had to give away guys like Javier Baez, Anthony Rizzo, Kris Bryant, a lot of key pieces for, that team that won in the 2016 World Series. And then they also traded away Craig Kimbrel. But in the end, they brought in some talent. If we take a look here, I mean, for Javier Baez, you got a Peter Crow Armstrong. For Craig Kimbrel, you brought in Nick Madrigal and a young pitcher and a Cody Hewer. For Kris Bryant, you brought in a solid outfield prospect and an Alexander Canario. I mean, even for Jake Marisnick, you brought in an Anderson Espinoza, who at one point was being compared to a Pedro Martinez. I mean, you got, a Bailey Horn for Ryan Tepera. For Anthony Rizzo the other night, you got Kevin Alcantara, who I think is a pretty underrated prospect. You also got Vizcaino. I mean, you got Greg Deichmann. I mean, the Cubs had a phenomenal trade deadline. Of course, I know it's a sad day in Chicago having to move on from all of these players, but if a team were to sell, this is how you do it. You brought in some phenomenal talent. Cubs fans, you should be very excited for the future. Let's stay in Chicago. Let's go to the White Sox. So the White Sox had a good day yesterday. They brought in Craig Kimbrel, the top reliever on the market for the trade deadline this year. This guy's been locked down this year, and that bullpen was already really good. And you're adding him, you're adding Ryan Tepera. I mean, think of the bullpen. Liam Hendricks, Craig Kimbrel, Garrett Crochet, Michael Kopech, Ryan Tepera. You got Bummer in there as well, who's been decent. I mean, that bullpen is phenomenal. And then you also brought in, a Cesar Hernandez, where, this is a guy that's going to take over for Nick Madrigal. That is the one hiccup I'm having with this. I love that they brought in Kimbrel, Tepera. I do like the Cesar Hernandez move. It's going to give him a little more pop. He has a career high in home runs this year. And he's going to slide in at second base for Nick Madrigal, who was out for the whole year anyway. But to give up on a young player like that, who has shown that he can succeed in the major leagues and do very well. This guy's a hitting machine. I'm a big fan of Nick Madrigal. That's the one hiccup I'm having with the White Sox. I do appreciate the fact that they went out and got their guy in a Craig Kimbrel, but losing a Nick Madrigal was really tough. So, in my personal opinion, I'm going to put the White Sox just at decent for now. That is, if you didn't have to give up a Nick Madrigal, I mean, they would obviously, for me personally, be winners. I know White Sox fans, I'm probably going to catch a lot of heat for that one, but I mean, I don't know, just losing a Nick Madrigal like that, who could be, a cornerstone of your franchise for years to come at the top of your order, that's tough for me. So for now, I'm just going to keep the White Sox at decent. Next up, the Miami Marlins. I thought the Marlins had a pretty decent trade deadline this year. You parted ways with guys like a Yimi Garcia, a Starling Marte, a John Curtis, and Adam Duvall. I mean, there was no reason to hang on to these guys. If you're the Marlins, you're looking to the future. You brought in a lot of prospects here, but I think the biggest get was Jesus Luzardo. He is having a down year this year. I understand that, but this is a guy who was a top prospect at one point. The Marlins do extremely well with developing pitching. I mean, Jesus Luzardo, I think you couldn't have a better home than with the Miami Marlins. And, you brought in some really solid prospects as well, a couple of catching prospects. Brian De La Cruz, who's now going to be the number 29 prospect in your system, according to MLB Pipeline. I really liked it. I liked what the Marlins did. I think the Marlins, hey, I'm going to call them winners because they did exactly what they needed to do. They needed to get away from some of these guys that were, having expiring contracts. They brought in prospects. To me, the Marlins are winners. Moving on to the Philadelphia Phillies. I liked what the Phillies did yesterday. They had one trade that killed two birds with one stone. They needed some starting pitching depth, and they needed to improve the bullpen. You did that with one trade. Kyle Gibson and Ian Kennedy. Kyle Gibson's having a good year this year. Ian Kennedy's having a good year this year. Those two should help out. And for Kyle Gibson, you're going to have him for next year. However, man, it cost you one of your top pitching prospects in a Spencer Howard. That's tough. I know he's had a bit of a slower time getting adjusted to the major league level. The numbers haven't been quite there. He's had a couple little injuries here and there, but Spencer Howard to me was one of the better pitching prospects in the game. That's a tough one. I mean, it is what it is. I understand you have to give up something good to get something good. I also, I like the Freddie Galvis move. I think that's going to be good overall for their infield depth. Overall, I think for the Phillies, kind of like the White Sox, you did have a good day, but you had to give up something. And, for me personally, I'm going to put the Phillies at decent. I think they did good. I just don't think they're, they didn't have a bang kind of a day. Moving on to the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds didn't really do anything special this year, but they addressed a need. They needed to work on that bullpen. You got a Michael Givens. You got Justin Wilson and Luis Cessa basically for free. So, I mean, for the Cincinnati Reds, you didn't do anything drastic by any means, but hey, you addressed a need. The bullpen needed some tinkering. So overall, I'm just going to go okay, I guess, for the Reds. Nothing crazy. Moving on to the Detroit Tigers. I thought the Tigers kind of, I don't know, very lackluster kind of a day. I thought they had some moves in them. You have a Jonathan Schoop who's going to be a free agent. I know Matthew Boyd is hurt right now. I don't know if any teams were, looking to bite on a Matthew Boyd. He is starting to throw again, so he is going to be back relatively soon. I feel like you could have gotten something for him. I just feel like for the Tigers yesterday, I mean, you traded away a Daniel Norris. You got an okay prospect and a Reese Olson. But overall, I just feel like the Tigers kind of had just a lame day. I'm going to put them as a loser, honestly. I think they could have done more, maybe help set them up a little bit better for next season. I think the Tigers, they got a lot of young talent coming up. I think the Tigers are going to be really good sooner rather than later. I just wish they would have done some more yesterday. Moving on to the San Diego Padres, the team that has just been making all the trades going back to last year's trade deadline. So overall, you got Adam Frazier. I mean, that happened, this past week. But then you got Daniel Hudson recently, and then Jake Marisnick was yesterday. So overall, I like what the Padres did. Adam Frazier is going to deepen that lineup. Daniel Hudson, I thought they could have used another bullpen arm, so I like that move. Jake Marisnick is going to add some depth, for the outfield. So overall, I would have liked the Padres to add a starting pitcher. I mean, they've been having, some ups and downs with that starting rotation, whether it's, performance or injury. So I think they kind of fell short in that department. It looked like they had a Max Scherzer, but overall, I'm going to give the Padres a decent. I really think if they could have addressed that starting rotation, that would have been huge. You did make some pretty good moves to help the team overall, but not getting a starting pitcher, losing out on Max Scherzer, that hurt a little bit for the Padres. So overall, I'm going to give them a decent. The Toronto Blue Jays. I am very torn on the Toronto Blue Jays for this. I mean, don't get me wrong. You added some good pieces. Jose Berrios, obviously, one of the better young starting pitchers in the game. That was a great move for the Blue Jays. Love adding Jose Berrios. I like that you added, some veteran relievers in Brad Hand and Joakim Soria. But, ooh, you gave up Austin Martin. Austin Martin, I understand Jose Berrios, the market for him, it was very competitive. If you had to move on from both Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson, that's tough. Austin Martin, I think, is going to be a star in this game. I mean, this was a guy who's, in my opinion, a pretty complete player. Sure, maybe the power could be a little bit better with an Austin Martin, but, I mean, as you get older, as you start adding strength, I think the power can come along with an Austin Martin. I mean, they added good players to this team, but man, moving on from an Austin Martin like that, I can understand moving on from a Simeon Woods Richardson, but oh man, that is really bugging me. It's just not sitting well in my stomach. So overall, for the Blue Jays, I'm going to go decent. I thought they added really good pieces. They needed a starting pitcher. They needed some bullpen guys. I like that they did that, but man, moving on from an Austin Martin, that's tough for me, so I'm just going to go decent for now. Moving on to the Kansas City Royals. I thought they did okay overall. I mean, you moved on from a Jorge Soler and a Danny Duffy. You did get Casey Kalich, who's now going to be your number 24 prospect. For Danny Duffy, a player to be named later. I thought it was okay. At least you got some talent for these guys. It would have been better if maybe you could have, gotten some better prospects, but it is what it is. For the Royals, I'm just going to go okay, I guess. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Hey, the Pirates did what they needed to do yesterday. They moved on from some guys that there was no need to have on that roster anymore. You moved on from a Richard Rodriguez. You moved on from a Tyler Anderson. You know, I thought the Pirates, again, they did exactly what they needed to do. They brought in some young guys. You brought in a Michael Chavis, who, as a Red Sox fan, I mean, I've seen the potential with Michael Chavis, but there was just never a spot for him. I think Pittsburgh is going to be a better home for him. I hope he does well there. There's a lot of talent in the Ice Horse. I like that pickup for the Pirates. I thought that was a pretty low-key pickup for them. You know, you added a Carter Binns, who's now going to be your number 30 prospect. You know, solid catching prospect. Doesn't hurt to add a catching prospect. So, I mean, they didn't add any, like, you know, flashy, you know, prospects by any means. But, hey, they did what they needed to do. So, overall, I'm going to go decent for the Pirates. Moving on to the LA Angels. I don't know what this Angels organization is doing. I just don't understand. They just continue to baffle me every single day. I just don't understand what this team is doing. I mean, Andrew Heaney, sure, you moved on from him. He's going to be a free agent soon. I think that was fine. You know, you added a couple of decent prospects here. You traded away a Tony Watson, but it's like, I don't know what this Angels team is doing. I mean, I don't know. You didn't add anyone to maybe help out for next season. I understand maybe they don't have the best farm system out there, but I don't know. There's just no creativity. There's just, I don't know. It just feels like such a stagnant organization. I don't really know. It's like you're kind of just sitting in limbo for, you know, all the time with the Angels. I don't know. It's just a frustrating sight to see when they have so much talent and they're not making, you know, any moves for the now. They didn't make any, you know, big moves for the future. I don't know. I'm just not seeing anything with this Angels team. I'm going to put them as a loser for yesterday. I just don't think they really did anything. I mean, I don't know. You moved on from Andrew Heaney. Sure, you got a couple of guys for him, but I don't know. I just feel like the Angels, they just continued to not make any impactful moves at all. They didn't address the pitching or anything. I don't know. I just don't see what this Angels team is doing. I don't know. Out of frustration, I'm going to put them as a loser. On to the Cleveland Indians, or soon to be the Cleveland Guardians. So, hey, you know what? I actually kind of liked what the Indians did yesterday. You added a couple of pretty decent pieces. You got a Peyton Battenfield, who is now going to be your number 29 prospect. So, hey, you're adding some prospect depth there. But overall, I love them getting Miles Straw. Miles Straw is having a decent year with the Houston Astros this year. A young player. He's cheap. I like this move for the Indians. I thought that was a pretty, you know, low-key move. They won that trade. You know, Mayton's been having, you know, an okay year, I guess, but Miles Straw, this is a center fielder that you can put in, you know, put on your team for the next few years. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I thought it was a great move. You moved on from a Cesar Hernandez. You got Pilkington out of it. So overall, I thought the Indians, or the Guardians, actually had a pretty decent day. I love the move for Miles Straw. The Atlanta Braves had themselves a rather good trade deadline. Let's go take a look at this. So, I mean, you added pieces that you needed. You needed a guy for that bullpen, and you went out and got a Richard Rodriguez. I mean, and also, you know, you lost Ronald Acuna Jr., but I really like the approach that they took to try and, you know, replenish the offense. You added Jorge Soler, Adam Duvall. You brought him back yesterday. I mean, don't forget, they also added a Stephen Vaught. I thought that was actually, you know, a pretty low-key, okay move for them back a couple of weeks ago. But then you added Jock Peterson, you know, back on July 15th. I thought that was really good. I just love the approach that they took, you know, to replenishing that offense. But they added a bullpen arm. I thought was very needed. This National League East is still up for grabs, I think. The Braves, I think, had a really solid day. They didn't have to move on from anything substantial by any means. I thought the Braves are winners to me. I thought they had a really good day yesterday. On to the St. Louis Cardinals. I mean, I don't know. The Cardinals were okay at the trade deadline, I guess. I mean, you added John Lester. Hey, I love me some John Lester, but it's not the John Lester of old. J.A. Happ, I mean, okay. You added a Zooch a little while back. I mean, I guess that's okay. I don't know. The Cardinals just didn't really make any big splashes by any means. I don't know. I just feel like with the Cardinals, they could have just done more. I mean, I do appreciate the fact that they added some starting pitching depth. These are guys that are going to make their starts, so I thought that was good. I mean, I guess it's okay. At least they made some moves the best they could, you know, to address, you know, the needs. I mean, they addressed a need at the end of the day. They needed starting pitching depth, and that's exactly what they did. They didn't have to move on from anything crazy. So I'll say okay for the Cardinals. On to the Tampa Bay Rays. And, you know, it's kind of hard to judge really where the Rays rank here. For the Rays, I mean, you got to go back here. You got to remember, you know, adding a Nelson Cruz was a good move for the offense. I really like that move. You know, you got rid of a Rich Hill to clear a roster spot for a Luis Patino. You brought in a couple of young players there. I actually really liked the Diego Castillo move. You know, Diego Castillo has been a really good reliever this year for the Rays, but they took advantage of his high value. And they brought in, you know, a JT Chagua, who has actually been pretty decent for the Mariners this year. And they brought in a young, power-hitting third baseman. I like that move with an Austin Shenton. Thought that was pretty good. You brought in a Jordan Luplow. You know, that's fine. He's proven to be an on-base guy, and you know, for the Rays, I feel like that could actually be a pretty decent fit. Not sure really how you use him. I guess maybe off the bench, but you know, for the Rays, you know, I was kind of expecting them to make a pretty big splash. I know Nelson Cruz is a pretty good move. I would have liked to see maybe one more thing. I would have loved them, you know, to add another starting pitcher, but they seem to be okay with the starting pitching that they already have. But, you know, for the Rays, I'm going to go decent. I don't think, I'm not going to call them a clear-cut winner at this point. But, hey, for the Rays, they made some really solid moves. They made a couple of moves for the future as well. So I'll go decent for the Rays. On to the Oakland A's. They were very busy during this trade season. I mean, they made quite a few moves. You know, going back this last week, you added Andrew Chafin for that bullpen, which I think that bullpen needed something. I like that move. But, you know, the biggest move of all, Starling Marte. And, you know, having to give up a Jesus Luzardo. I understand Jesus Luzardo hasn't really, you know, been what you expected him to be. I thought maybe they moved on from him a little too quick. I guess they just thought, I don't know, they couldn't fix this guy. I don't know what it is. But, you know, Starling Marte, I like. I mean, but he is a free agent soon. I mean, if you could maybe get him signed up to something long-term, I think that could be really good. You know, I did like the move of Yan Gomes and Josh Harrison. You know, I don't know, the Jesus Luzardo thing, I'm a big fan of Jesus Luzardo. I really liked him when he came up a couple of years ago. I think he is going to have a better home in Miami. I think that's going to be a better fit. But, you know, the fact that you just moved on from him so quick, you know, this guy was a top pitching prospect at one point. You know, because of that, I'm just going to only go decent for the A's. I mean, they addressed a lot of needs, but overall, it's just moving on from Luzardo, that was just tough for me to swallow. So I'll go decent for the A's. On to the New York Yankees, and right off the bat, I'm just going to put them as winners. I mean, they made the moves they needed to make, and they made actually quite a few different moves. Obviously, they added a Joey Gallo, and they also added Rodriguez for the bullpen. I think that was a low-key decent move. Has a better FIP than the ERA, so I think Rodriguez could end up finding a decent home in that Yankees bullpen. I mean, then you also go back to Clay Holmes, who I think is a different look, you know, a sinker baller kind of a guy, throws hard. I actually like that move for the bullpen. You know, but Anthony Rizzo, I mean, adding an Anthony Rizzo and a Joey Gallo, that's huge. Two left-handed bats. They really needed some left-handed bats, very righty dominant in that lineup, and you just added two of the better left-handed bats in the game. That's huge. Love that. And for the Joey Gallo trade, I mean, they won that trade, I think. You didn't have to give up a lot of, you know, big-time talent. Sure, you moved on from a Duran and a Smith, who Baseball America have in the Yankees top 10. Before the season, they were more in the 15 to 12 range, somewhere in there, mid-tier prospects. So they've been having, you know, good seasons down in the minor leagues. So, you know, you had to move on from something decent, but I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to, you know, hinder their future by any means. And you added an Andrew Heaney, who, you know, the Angels have had bad defense this year. The Yankees, you know, while they don't have amazing defense, that's better than what the Angels are doing. So I think Heaney is going to have a lot more success with the Yankees. That ERA for him is a lot higher than the FIP. FIP is right at around a 4, so I think he's going to be a really solid addition for the Yankees. I love what they did. As a Red Sox fan, you know, seeing the way they improved their team, that's huge. Hey, definitely winners for me. And let's talk about my Red Sox. Why not? We just talked about the Yankees, so let's move on to the Red Sox. So, you know, I was pretty pumped up with the Kyle Schwarber move, but you also have to remember this guy is still coming back from a hamstring injury. He was red hot before he went down. So the Red Sox could have used another left-handed bat. Do you put Schwarber at first? I could maybe see that happening. So I like that move with Schwarber. Hansel Robles, you know, Austin Davis, you know, these are guys that aren't really having great years out of the bullpens where they were. You know, I don't know. Hansel Robles, I do like the fact that he's a hard thrower, but he just hasn't really had the success. Austin Davis is going to give you a different look. You know, Chaim Bloom, I trust Chaim Bloom because he finds these pitchers that haven't really been having a lot of success, but he seems to be able to have a game plan for these kind of guys. So I trust Chaim Bloom. Overall, I would have maybe liked to seen another starting pitcher get added for some depth. You do have Chris Sale coming back soon. You do have Tanner Houck, but I think the Red Sox, it would have been nice if they could have added a starting pitcher, not just for this year. I'm not saying like a Max Scherzer, but someone that could have, been cheap, someone under control, someone like a Merrill Kelly, I thought would have been, a pretty nice move. You moved on from Michael Chavis. He hasn't really found his home in Boston. He had a red-hot start when he came up, but teams started to figure him out. So I think with the Pirates, I think he's going to have a fresh start there. He's going to find a home easier there. Overall, I think for the Red Sox, I'm going to go okay. I would have liked, I do like the Kyle Schwarber move, but in the end, they went over the luxury tax line to bring him in, and he's injured at the moment. So, hopefully that left-handed bat is going to really, bring something to the table for the Red Sox. So we'll have to wait and see. But you know what? Right now, I can't really say that they're anything more than just okay because I need to see how Austin Davis and Hansel Robles turn out. Does Chaim Bloom have a game plan for them? We'll have to wait and see. But overall, I'm just going to go okay for the Red Sox. On to the Texas Rangers. And you know what? I think the Rangers did well this year by the deadline. The Rangers only had really a couple of trades, but two trades that brought in some talent. I mean, I talked about Duran and Smith earlier in the Joey Gallo trade, but in the end, these are two pretty solid prospects that could end up being contributors to the Rangers down the road. As of right now, as mentioned earlier, Baseball America had them in the top 10 with their mid-season prospect rankings for the Yankees. So, I like it. And the Yankees have a deep farm system, so the fact that they're in the top 10, that says a lot to me. But Duran, Smith has been having a really good year. Duran's been pretty decent in the minors down there. But you also brought in a Spencer Howard. This is a guy who was the top pitching prospect for the Phillies. I mean, come on. This is a good day for the Rangers. You added some really good talent. You moved on from a Kyle Gibson. There was no need to hang on to him. You got what you got for him. You got everything you could out of Kyle Gibson. There was no need to keep him on the roster. Ian Kennedy was going to be a free agent soon, and the fact that you took advantage of his value while you could is really good. And again, for Gallo, sure, I would have liked for them to get more out of that Gallo, out of the Gallo trade, but in the end, I mean, you added some pretty decent guys, but then you also added Spencer Howard. I'm going to say for the Rangers, I'm going to call them a winner. I think the Rangers did exactly what they needed to do, and you added some top-tier talent. I love it. Rangers, to me, are a winner. On to the Arizona Diamondbacks. The Arizona Diamondbacks, they didn't really do much, but yeah, you moved on from a Joakim Soria, you moved on from an Eduardo Escobar, you moved on from a Vaught. I thought they did okay. They added some young guys here. They added some prospects. I mean, there was no need to keep an Eduardo Escobar on the roster anymore. There was no need to hang on to a Joakim Soria. You might as well start looking towards the future. They brought in some prospects. They did what they needed to do. I mean, no big splashes by any means. And, for the Diamondbacks, I'm just going to go okay. I thought they did fine. They made the moves that they needed to make. On to the Colorado Rockies. I mean, they had a couple of players there that maybe you could have moved on from. Trevor Story, John Gray. Trevor Story, it's a tough situation because he's not really having a great season offensively this year. The defense with the throwing this year hasn't really been too great according to other executives on other major league teams that have been scouting him. John Gray, he's going to be a free agent soon, but, I don't know. It's moving on to the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies are an interesting case this deadline. Sure, you had a couple of players in a Trevor Story and a John Gray. Trevor Story is an interesting one because he's going to be a free agent soon, but he's having a down year offensively. Teams have been kind of questioning, the throwing at short. Some teams are wondering if maybe there's some kind of an injury going on with a Trevor Story. So in the end, the Rockies just didn't, I'm sure they had maybe an offer or two, but they didn't really like the offers. And for a John Gray, I'm kind of surprised you weren't able to get anything out of him. You could offer these guys the qualifying offers in free agency, and if they move on to other teams, you can at least get draft picks for them. John Gray, I'm kind of surprised about that one. The Rockies are nowhere near competing. To me, I think you should have found a way to get these deals done. I think you have to, in the end, you have to say the Rockies, they lost in this deadline. They didn't make any significant moves at all for the future. So yeah, the Rockies to me are a loser. On to the San Francisco Giants. They made one big move yesterday for Kris Bryant. Kris Bryant's having a really good bounce back season this year. But what I like about Kris Bryant is this guy can practically play anywhere on the field. For the Giants, you don't have Evan Longoria back yet, but that's going to add another bat. And then when you get Longoria back, that's going to be a decent bat. This Giants team is going to be looking pretty decent offensively. You also added a Tony Watson for the bullpen. But what I liked about the Giants day yesterday is they didn't really give up anything substantial prospect-wise. There was a rumor out there that maybe they had moved on from Joey Bart, and I thought, ooh, that's a big price to pay for a Kris Bryant. But ended up being an Alexander Canario and a Caleb Killian. So in the end, I thought, I think the Giants won that trade for a Kris Bryant. Sure, maybe he's only going to be a rental, but who knows? Maybe you can sweet talk him into an extension for the next few years. We'll have to wait and see. But overall, I think the Giants were winners yesterday. They made a move. They're in contention. They're in first place in the NL West. I like what the Giants did. So overall, I'm going to say they are winners. On to the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros actually did pretty decent this past week. Sure, you moved on from a Miles Straw. I didn't like that very much, but at least they're adding a Maton who is a young pitcher. I like that, but they really needed to address the bullpen. That's the one thing they needed to work on, and they added Yimi Garcia, Kendall Graveman. They got him Montero. Sure, maybe he's not having the greatest of years, but I really liked what the Astros did. They needed to address the bullpen, and that's exactly what they did. And to me, they have the best offense this year. They have really solid starting pitching. I would have maybe liked another starting pitcher just for depth. I thought that would have been good, but the main thing that they needed to address was the bullpen. They did that. I like it. For the Astros, I'm going to say, hey, winners, because right now, they're one of the best teams in baseball, and the one area that they needed to work on, they did. So I'm going to say they're a winner. Let's talk about the Washington Nationals. The Nationals did really good. Yes, they were in a very similar position like the Cubs. They needed to sell, but man, oh man, they got some talent. Okay, yes, I understand. You had to move on from a Max Scherzer and a Trea Turner, which is still crazy to me. But you brought in a Kyber Ruiz, a Josiah Gray in that trade. You got rid of Brad Hand, and you got Riley Adams for him. I mean, you got, for Kyle Schwarber, you brought in a decent pitching prospect in Ronaldo Ramirez. You gave up a Daniel Hudson. You brought in a couple of prospects there. You brought in a few prospects for Yan Gomes and Josh Harrison. You brought in a Lane Thomas, who's a young outfielder for John Lester. The Nationals had a great day. They did exactly what they needed to do. They needed to move on from Max Scherzer. Did they need to move on from a Trea Turner? I'm not quite sure, but I liked what they brought in return. Overall, I'm going to say the Nationals are winners. That they did what they needed to do. They added some quality prospects to that system. For a system that really needed some prospect depth, they did exactly what they needed to do. The Nationals, to me, are winners. On to the Seattle Mariners, and I'm going to say this right now. Jon Heyman, the Seattle Mariners are nowhere near losers this year by the deadline. Are you kidding me, Jon Heyman? The Mariners made some really good moves. First off, let's get back to the Kendall Graveman trade. A lot of people were upset about that. Sure, I messed with the clubhouse chemistry, but whatever. This is a business at the end of the day. They're grown men. They're going to be fine. Kendall Graveman, you moved on from him, but you brought in an Abraham Toro who could be a future third baseman for you. After that, you brought in a Diego Castillo. So you basically replaced a Kendall Graveman with a Diego Castillo, and in the process, you brought in a future third baseman. That is a win, in my opinion. Are you kidding me? Arguably, Diego Castillo has maybe even been having a better year than a Kendall Graveman. He's been great out of that Rays bullpen. And you brought in some starting pitching depth in Tyler Anderson. That's a need you needed to address. They didn't give up anything really too substantial. Sure, Austin Shenton, that was a pretty decent prospect to give up, but I mean, come on. I mean, this was a great trade deadline for the Mariners. They are winners. They are winners, winners, winners. No, Jon Heyman, they are not losers. Let's talk about the Milwaukee Brewers. I think they did really well this year. Let's go look at some of the trades they made. They brought in a couple of pretty decent relievers. John Curtis is having a good year. Daniel Norris, Daniel Norris, the ERA is a little high, 5.89 this year, but take a look at the FIP, 3.78 FIP, just about 10 strikeouts per nine. I think Daniel Norris is going to end up having a really good time in that Brewers bullpen, especially with that defense behind him. Look at the FIP, 3.78, better defense should help out that ERA a lot. And if you go back as well, they added an Eduardo Escobar a couple of days ago. I thought that was a really solid move to add some offense. They also added a Rowdy Tellez. Rowdy Tellez has actually been doing great for the Brewers. Since joining the Brewers, he's hit .357, 4 home runs, 12 homers. Really like this move. To me, I mean, the Brewers are clear-cut winners by the trade deadline this year. They made some good moves. They addressed the bullpen. The back end of that bullpen is really good. I think they needed to add a couple of guys to middle relief there. And hey, they added a couple of bats. I like it. The Brewers, to me, are winners. On to the Minnesota Twins. We talked about the Twins earlier when I was talking about the Blue Jays. The Twins had a phenomenal day yesterday. They are completely out of it. They needed to make some trades, and they brought in some really good young talent. Obviously, earlier I started with Austin Martin. Austin Martin, one of the better prospects in the game. Simeon Woods Richardson, one of the better pitching prospects in the game. Sure, maybe not having the year that he's wanting to have down in the minor leagues, but the tools are there with a Simeon Woods Richardson. You moved on from a Hansel Robles and a J.A. Happ. You brought in some decent guys there. Even going back to Nelson Cruz, they added a Joe Ryan and a Drew Strotman. Really liked what the Twins did. But if you take a look here, Austin Martin is now number 2 on MLB Pipeline for them. Simeon Woods Richardson is number 3. The Twins, a phenomenal day. A phenomenal day. I cannot believe they got Austin Martin for Jose Berrios. That is huge. Sure, you need to see how he pans out, but I think Austin Martin is going to really develop into something. So for me, the Twins are winners. On to the Baltimore Orioles. So the Orioles, they didn't really do all that much. I didn't really think they needed to do all that much. They need to let these guys just develop down in the minor leagues. They're young guys on the major league team. They just need to get reps. They need to just keep getting better. Sure, you moved on from a Freddie Galvis. You were able to bring in Tyler Birch for that. They brought in, a couple of things here and there in this past month. So, overall, I'm just going to say okay for the Orioles. Really, what they need to focus on is just player development. On to the New York Mets. They made a splash yesterday, adding a Javier Baez. Also brought in a Trevor Williams there. But man, giving up Peter Crow Armstrong, that was a little tough to swallow. This was a guy that was picked, in the first round in the draft last year, and he's playing extremely well down in the minor leagues. So that was a little tough. Good for the Cubs getting him. You made a couple other moves. You brought in a Rich Hill, last week. I think for the Mets, I think they really could have added some more pitching depth. Sure, you added a Trevor Williams and a Rich Hill. I know you're going to be getting some guys back. I think for the Mets, their biggest focus is to get guys healthy. I think Javier Baez is going to be a nice addition for that lineup, and especially, while Francisco Lindor is still coming back from injury, you're going to add some pop with a Javier Baez. I think overall, I think the Mets maybe could have done a little bit more. I think they could have maybe added another arm for the bullpen. I don't know. Rich Hill is nice. I don't hate the move, but, I don't know. I just think they maybe could have done a little bit more. I think, just improve that pitching depth and, for the stretch run to try and make the playoffs. So overall, I'm going to say the Mets are just decent. I think they had a good deadline. I'm not going to say they're bang winners, though. And last but not least, the LA Dodgers. Are you kidding me? This team is looking just stupid at this point. You lost Trevor Bauer recently. Who knows if he's even going to be coming back this year. You lost to Dustin May to injury. But man, are you kidding me? You added Max Scherzer and Trea Turner. Sure, you had to move on from a Kyber Ruiz, but really, Kyber Ruiz was blocked. He wasn't really going to be able to, make any kind of an impact, especially with Will Smith having a really good year this year. Josiah Gray, that would have been a nice pitcher to, have for the major leagues for the next few years, but I think it was worth it to give up for a Max Scherzer and a Trea Turner, and you're going to have Trea Turner for next year too, and especially with Corey Seager, going into free agency, you can just have Trea Turner as your shortstop for next season. You also added a Danny Duffy for some starting pitching depth. He is working his way back from injury. So for the Dodgers, you're clear winners, especially in that National League West. It's a dogfight out there, and you made the move. You brought in a Max Scherzer. You brought in a Trea Turner. Absolute winners, the Dodgers this year. So this is what I'm thinking for everything. These are my winners. These are the teams that I thought had decent trade deadlines. Okay, I guess these are the teams. And these are my 3 losers for this year. So tell me what you think down below in the comments. What do you think? Would you have moved some other teams around? Let me know what you think. But that's all I have for right now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.